Hello, Audioholics. This is Logan, and with me is...
The Suicide Machine.
Woo! Is there a song called Suicide Machine on here? Is that why...
There is.
Okay.
It's about euthanasia.
And euthanasia, they got enough problems with children already.
Yeah, so today we are listening to the album Human by the progressive tech death, traditional death metal band Death.
Okay, new rule to metal bands. If it takes more than 5 seconds to describe what the fuck you are, you're a little bit too much.
Yeah, I think the important bit about this album is, I know you're not really, you don't know much about Death. Their first album was death metal in that, all of the lyrics were, gory, horror, and the music was much more hardcore. And then you go through the albums, and starting with, I think, Spiritual Healing, maybe Leprosy, they started adding more progressive elements into their music and more technical elements. Human is the album where I think they refined that the most.
Okay. So, basically, I make no secret about it. I'm not very well-versed in death metal, and I don't usually really like it.
Yeah.
So Tyler, just before we started recording, he told me two things. One, don't listen as much to the vocals. Listen to the instrumentation. And then two, he said, don't think of it like Cannibal Corpse. Think of it more like, I guess he kind of said more like amplified thrash, like Megadeth or
Slayer.
Early Metallica or something.
Yeah. Because that's where it came from. Number one most influential album to death metal as a genre is Rain and Blood by Slayer.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah.
And that album was influenced by early Metallica. And, it's just amplified thrash. I mean, yeah, it evolved in different directions. You have Death Doom, you have progressive death, you have Black Death, you have all kinds of hybrid and subgenres within death metal at this point. But back when this album came out, it was more just amplified thrash, basically.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, I don't really... Have you listened to this album before, Tyler?
Yeah.
Do you have any, background on the album? I guess I should have asked to see if
you mean,
should have
historically speaking?
I should have asked you to, maybe do some research so that we could, maybe ease ourselves more into the album. I guess you didn't do that.
I mean, I have an elementary understanding of Death. Chuck Schuldiner is the main, brains of the operation here. And he released all of these amazing albums within the genre. And, well, he is no longer around, unfortunately. That's the reason Death doesn't have any albums after... When did Sound of Perseverance come out? 98.
98,
because,
okay. 98?
Yeah.
98, what? Dimebag died then, I think?
I don't remember when he died, actually.
I think it was something like that. And then, this... All I'm saying is there's now a fairly decent chance I'm a reincarnated, metal star.
Anyway, in about 1999, he was diagnosed with cancer, and he did eventually die from cancer, which is why we don't have any more death records. But the legacy he left cannot be denied. And in my opinion, Human is at least one of the peaks of the band. It's my personal favorite Death album. Although I love Leprosy, I love Scream, Bloody Gore, I even like Spiritual Healing, and Sound of Perseverance is up there too. But Human is my favorite.
Are all of these albums pretty well received?
Yeah. This album was universally given 10 out of 10.
Except Pitchfork. Oh my God, see if Pitchfork reviewed it.
Yes.
After. So we used to do that, and we kind of fell out of favor of it. But
because they stopped doing everything that we covered.
Yeah, and we just ended up getting on a streak of a whole lot of newer albums. This will be one of the first older albums, one of the more classic albums that we've done in a while, because we just did what? Bob Dylan, Haken, what was the one we just did yesterday? Oh, Static X.
Static
Yeah.
X was really fun.
Right.
I actually don't think they've reviewed any Death.
Oh, okay.
And this is why we stopped doing this, because they haven't
Yeah.
reviewed any of the albums we're doing.
Yeah. It's yeah, but we used to do a bunch of Pitchfork reviews, and like a bit of a history lesson, a brief history lesson of Audioholics Unite. Two reviews that immediately stuck out. One was the infamous Shags review,
Mhm.
you know, where we like threw feces at the wall and, you know, did a satanic ritual. But
Yeah.
also another highlight of that review, I mean, I guess it's not really a highlight as compared to like all the crazy shit that happened. Unfortunately, it didn't actually air. And even if it would, I think it would break YouTube's demonetization algorithm. But basically, there was a Pitchfork review. And it was something to the tune of, and keep in mind, this is widely considered to be one of the worst albums of all time. Pitchfork actually defended it and basically said something to the tune of, if you don't like this album, you're too dense to understand its pure genius, or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And it's literally a bunch of kids, like 14 or 15, without musical experience, who were just groomed to become musicians without any kind of actual like training. And it was all based off of like or talent, and it was all just based off of a prophecy. And then the other one was Gojira, where it was something to the tune of like, so like this one actually did air. It was Way of All Flesh, I believe. And
which, by the way, is a technical death metal album.
Okay. And it was something to the tune of, because the album was about the environment, or the concept of it was about the environment, it was something to the tune of course they care about the environment. They're French. And it was like,
they actually fucking wrote that in an
they
article.
wrote something. It can't be like, I every time I say that, I'm like, I have to be taking this out of context. Was I wrong?
Really
like,
wasn't, though.
Did they really say
if
that?
If it was a joke, it was a really poorly executed joke.
Yeah. Like, no, like, not even a joke. Like, is that really what they said? Like,
yes.
Every time I say that, I feel like I'm taking it out of context.
Yes, they literally said that in the article.
Wow. Anyway, here's Death. Do you want to just get to the album?
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, me neither. All right, so I have a few announcements. One, if you're interested in tier lists, by the time this comes out, we might actually have it up. The System of a Down, Wrong Opinion. But we also have done like Metallica, Rush, Dream Theater, I did Led Zeppelin. And then if you're interested in getting into prog or trip hop, we have Getting Into Prog and Trip Hop. I'm doing trip hop. He's doing prog music. He's done like Camel, Gentle Giant. It'll be a few other bands, because this is going to be posted probably quite a while in advance, because we have a couple new albums to get into. But also we have, we're doing our top 50 lists. So by the time that this comes up, we will both have hopefully a couple entries. But basically we're doing it by tens to kind of break everything up and make it more palatable. But I'll tell you, making this list, especially because I actually ranked it, he didn't, it was really difficult. Not the number one. The number one was actually pretty easy. That's been consistent. And like the first like few albums have been pretty consistent. Harder part was actually like deciding what actually belongs on the list in the lower tiers of like 40 through 50. That was actually the hardest part, I think, of making the list, was because, like, you know, like, basically everything on this album is at least, on this list is at least a 9 out of 10. So, yeah, like, a 9 out of 10, mostly a 10 out of 10. So, you know, like, I would say, like, that was the hardest part of doing it. But it's done. Basically, the list is ready. I just need to listen to some music, and by the time that you see this, there will hopefully be something uploaded. All right, so next thing, the link will, of course, be in the description. For the album, I highly recommend listening to it with AdBlock enabled for the best listening viewing experience so that it syncs up properly. But you can listen along if you want to. Hopefully you do, because otherwise you're just going to be subjected to copious amounts of white noise, basically. You know, or dead air, rather. White noise is a different thing. Whatever. All right. So, without further ado, let's listen to the album in 5, 4, 3, 2, and go. Flattering of Emotions is the first song. Already, I like the
Flattening
kick drum.
of Emotions.
Flattening of Emotions. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah, so
already I like the kick drum.
This album, like, one thing that sets it apart from a lot of death metal, especially at the time, is that this album features a lot of like political and societal commentary, and they had been doing that for like a few albums up to this point, but they really refined it here.
I can immediately tell you why you told me to focus on the instrumentals, because they are amazing. This riff is really good. Like, I'm not a guitar expert like he is, but I can immediately say I love the guitar tone on this album.
Oh yeah, it's legendary.
It's really heavy. I can also tell what you mean. Like, this was like definitely before like death metal had a concrete identity. Because like the vocals sort of sound a little bit different, I think, than like it's the blueprint is definitely there, but it sounds a little bit different.
Yeah, and one thing I said to him before the show is, like, if thrash metal is speed metal having sex with regular punk, this is thrash metal having sex with hardcore punk.
Yeah.
The vocals, especially in Death, remind me a lot of hardcore punk vocals. I actually own an album. I forget the name of the band, but it's like a saw blade vinyl, and the vocal style is pretty similar.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a hardcore punk record. Really good one.
I need to check my email on vinyl. I forgot to do that.
For the record, I know it's difficult to understand what he's saying because of the harsh vocals, but
I'm trying to figure that out.
If you read the lyrics, it's much easier.
I should have done that. Actually, talk a bit while I find the lyrics, because I'm realizing that's going to be important.
Gotcha. Well, you know, like, the lyricism on this album isn't like super poetic and amazing or anything. It's fucking death metal, but like it is pretty damn good for the genre, you know. Like, in this song, you have lyrics like, what's a good example? I guess the chorus, what went wrong to their picture-perfect life they once knew, flattening of emotions. Like, it's not bad lyricism. It's pretty good lyricism.
I picked up the lyrics now.
Okay.
What is the person that could have been? Yeah, this is definitely... Yeah.
Yeah, and you can hear, like, with this riff what I was talking about when I said it's like basically every song is Blackened or Battery, like the really fast Metallica songs.
Yeah. I don't know if you actually said that on the podcast. You might have said that off camera.
I don't know. Either way, like, one thing that immediately like came to mind for me is like my biggest problem with Slayer is that like it feels as if a lot of it is random. Like there's no actual groove or rhythm. It's just random chaos, which I guess is all right, but it
I
kind
would
of
just
messes with
say,
my internal. I'm
I would
sorry, what?
say like, I would say like you. This kind of suffers from a bit of the same. Like it's definitely prog. Like. Put it this way: you could never mosh to this kind of music.
Well, what I was gonna say is like the difference is this very clearly has a groove to it. Like you could 100% hum this rhythm. Like you can't do that with Slayer. Try and hum the fucking crazy section Rain of Blood. You try that shit. I'm not even sure what the hell they're playing in that part of the song. We are
You
now
know,
on Suicide Machine.
Suicide Machine. I like this riff. You know what's funny?
Hmm,
I've only ever heard that crazy part of Raining Blood. Actually, the MIDI version of it because of Vine Sauce,
really?
and it was like. Meow, 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 meow.
That's not the part I was talking about. I'll
Oh, it
show
was.
you after the show, but it's like,
Oh, okay.
oh,
And it was just,
impossible.
and he basically made a joke that it was basically like his computer screaming in pain because of all of the viruses and shit he put on it.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, like the chaotic feel that Slayer has is it works for what it is, but I don't like how random it feels. I prefer when there's like a very tight rhythm and groove in a group, and I think Death has that.
Manipulating destiny. When it comes to living, no one seems to care. But when it comes to waiting, to wanting out, those with power will be there. Damn. That I like the lyrics.
Yeah, the lyrics are really good. It's kind of like I really love what he points out in terms of this song with euthanasia. Like
Yeah.
you and I can debate euthanasia all day, but neither of us have been in the situation where we want to die but can't because of
Yeah.
the way like you and I debating euthanasia or politicians debating euthanasia is in of itself kind of disgusting because they are deciding the fate of somebody who wants to die but can't because of those rules.
Well, I mean, like,
They're
it's not it's. I agree that it's not like like white people debating black issues or men debating female issues. I mean, like, what you can like, what are you gonna do? Like, put a vegetable up on Senate? Like, how's that gonna work?
well, no, but like it's not just vegetables who need euthanasia. It's people in like extreme pain and agony who can't have
Yeah.
any relief from it because society says no, you're not allowed to die.
Wouldn't
Instead,
they like?
suffer for the rest of your
Yeah, but like,
existence.
wouldn't they like? You couldn't really be an activist for that. Like if you
You could. I
have that, like most of them would be like attached to like surgical equipment, right?
mean, some of them, sure, but I wouldn't say all of them. There's definitely some people. I mean, there have been activists who literally just like roll up in wheelchairs. I mean,
Yeah, that's fair. You're right.
all I'm saying is like
I,
the
I agree
fact
though.
it,
I think like in general, like if if anything has come out of this whole SJW kind of woke extravaganza, it's sort of the idea of like white people deciding what they think is best for black people or men deciding what they think is best for women is kind of laughably absurd.
I mean, it's not even just like gender or sex or anything like
Well,
that.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
in
yeah.
general.
Yeah, I'm saying in general, like those are just, I guess, some of the more mainstream examples that have come to light. Like,
I
and it
think
goes
like
both ways. Like, like I mean, I'm not trying to say like obviously I know what's best for women or minorities or anything like that, obviously. But I think when we have this kind of like to me, like when we have like, things like, oh, we can't say that because it might offend people, it kind of implies that the group that we might be offending is not capable of actually defending themselves, so we have to defend them.
We are now on Together as One, which is a song about Siamese twins.
Yeah, these are definitely really short songs. I mean, obviously it's punk influenced, so that makes sense.
Or maybe not, is Siamese the correct term? I think conjoined is the correct
Conjoined,
term, like
perhaps,
conjoined
yeah.
twins. Anyway, like my basic opinion is like, I mean, yeah, ideally we would have like a separate chair for every fucking gender and race and type of person and whatever else, but practically that will never happen. So ultimately we will have a bunch of
Well, I mean,
old white
like,
men or a bunch of old black men deciding the fate of things that they are not. That's just
yeah,
how
I
the
agree.
system has to
That's how the
work.
system works, but like, I mean,
It's how it has to work.
it is working, but it like we are having like more diversity, especially in like the last midterm. Like, there's black people. There was like an Asian American elected in the California House.
Yeah.
There's obviously people like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib who are Islamic or Muslim, whatever the proper term is. There's a Native American. Like, we are
There's
having
diversity, yeah.
there is diversity. I mean, obviously, there are going to be old white men in the Senate, and there always should be, because I mean, like, old white men deserve representation too, but so does everybody else. And I mean, I'm not
Well,
saying
what I'm
like just
saying
because
is like
I'm
true
saying like
diversity will never happen. It's not practical.
I think to some degree it is kind of starting to happen.
No, you would have to have like an equal amount of every single race,
Oh,
every gender,
yeah, like an
every
equal amount of
like you can't do
fair
that.
enough, fair enough. Because I mean, there's just considerably more of one person on this planet, or not
Well,
on this
then that's
planet, at
not
least in
even the
America.
issue. There's just too many different types of people out there to
Yeah,
represent
exactly.
all of them.
Yeah, but like I'm saying, like in a practical term, we are pushing forward.
But what I was
So
going
is
to say
this?
about the last song is that it kind of reminds me of Johnny Got His Gun, which is a song Metallica, or which is a book Metallica wrote a song about.
Hmm,
And like the biggest thing with that book is like he was a soldier who tripped on a landmine and he lost every single
yeah.
thing that he had. He lost his legs, he lost his arms, he lost his eyes, so he lost his ability to see, feel, hear, taste, literally just darkness. The only thing he had is his thoughts. And the one thing, like in the end of the movie, he's banging his head in Morse code saying, SOS, please kill me. And like the nurse tries to kill him, but the officers stop her from doing it. And the movie ends with him just repeating that over again, SOS, SOS, because he wants to die, but legally they can't kill him. So he
That
has to
entire
live
movie just
forever
right.
in that
Like
hell.
now, I'm realizing like you're telling me the plot, and I'm realizing that movie entirely evolves around being plot convenient.
Wait, what?
Like, so you're saying like a police officer just happened to show up just as he was about to pull the plug?
Well, he was in a hospital.
Hmm.
I mean, it's pretty realistic that a doctor would come in,
Oh, I thought you
especially
said a
like,
police officer.
well, it was a military place. So,
Oh, fair enough.
yeah. Anyway, the point is like they couldn't let him die, no matter how much sympathy that they had for him, because legally they're not allowed to kill him. They have to keep him alive. And that's
Fair enough.
fucked up to keep somebody in that position. I mean, yeah, that's an extreme, but it makes a point that
It does,
people really
yeah.
need to understand.
So on the topic of this song, it's pretty good. I'm reading the lyrics and they're very nice.
Yeah. Separating mentally, an illusion of privacy.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really cool song. I've never heard a song about like conjoined
Yeah.
twins and what it's like to be a conjoined twin. That's
Secret
very unique.
Face is what we are on now.
Yeah.
The first line is there is a mask. That's totally relevant. There's a mask that covers up one's true intention. Okay, that's how I'm ending the thing from now on. Or that's how I'm ending this video.
There is a mask. Bye, guys.
There is a mask that covers up one's true intentions.
Listen to that fucking riff.
Yeah. I think my favorite way I've ended one of these videos was the wrong opinion on Rush. You are only immortal for a limited time. Like, well, yeah, that's technically the truth.
Technically, yeah.
Yeah. I don't even remember what album that was off of, but that was such a bad lyric.
A mirror is a negative space.
Oh, that too. Secret Face?
This band did a song about the Evil Dead. It was really fucking good.
Okay, well, I gotta listen to that when this is done. It's not on this album, is it?
No, it's on their first album, Scream Bloody
I gotta
Gore.
hear that. Fucking Ice Nine Kills stole their shtick, man.
I love the lead playing on this album. Chuck Schuldiner is a legend.
Yeah. So he's what, the guitarist and the vocalist?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the lead player.
The
lineup of this album, I actually forget.
You should look that up. Yeah, but this is a tasty solo. Overall, I like this. I mean, like, I don't know if I would listen to it again. Maybe I would, just because, like, I feel like it's one of those things that I probably could get at least a deeper appreciation of. I don't know if I like it, but it's definitely something I can appreciate the hell out of.
So the lineup on this album was Chuck Schuldiner on lead and rhythm guitars, vocals, Paul Masvidal on guitar, Steve DiGiorgio on bass guitar, and Sean Reinhardt on drum/percussion. Yeah, as far as like whether or not you could get into this, I mean, you probably could. If you listen to like a little bit more of this album and maybe like a few other albums, maybe you could get more into it. I don't know if it's ever something you'll truly love, but
yeah, I wouldn't say I truly love it. I can't think of any objective flaws to it. I mean, the mix is fun. The mix is actually really fucking amazing, really heavy.
Mostly I show him this album because like something he said on the last podcast and a few times outside of podcasts
and
is that like music like this just sounds like noise layered on top of more noise.
It wasn't the last podcast. It was the last recorded podcast, which was Static X.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because we're probably assuming
this will probably come out a few weeks. Yeah, later.
Yeah, this will come out possibly in a few weeks. Assuming Virus comes out as scheduled, we will have done that, and also possibly because like a lot of things are coming out around this time, so it's totally possible we might try to cover something else as well.
Yeah.
This might be my favorite song so far.
I love Suicide Machine, both because of like the music of it, but also the lyricism of it.
I think musically is probably the best song.
My favorite song on the album is the next one, Lack of Comprehension.
Okay. Well, I haven't gotten to that one yet, but I like this song a lot. Lack of Comprehension, as he said, is up next. This is track 5. I can actually say it's track 5 because it's in big, bold fucking letters that it's track 5 on my lyric sheet.
This is my favorite song musically, but it's also my favorite song lyrically because this song is about two teens that ended their lives because and the parents of these teens basically blamed their suicide on Judas Priest. This is a pretty famous thing that happened.
Oh, this is that.
Yes, that's what this is about.
Yeah, I know about that. I've seen like Rob Halford take a stand.
Yeah, and this song is about how like those people have a lack of comprehension about the music and what it does to help people.
You know what the irony of all of that is the song that happened, they were blaming specifically Better By You, Better Than Me. The irony to all of that is that, and nobody, I guess, realized it, That song was a cover. That wasn't even their song.
Yeah, and furthermore, what in that song is even controversial?
Well, the argument that they made was backwards subliminal messages, saying like supposedly there's like subliminal voices saying do it, do it, do it if you play it back. I don't know. I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but the
Even if there
1980s were a very
was, like, do
weird
what? Do what? They could have meant, like, do the
make a
doo-wop.
pizza.
Who fucking knows?
But like backmasking was like a huge thing around that time, especially in like the evangelical Christian community. Bill Hicks actually did a really good bit on that.
But yeah, musically, I think this is the most, like, amazing thing on the
It
album.
like started
It's
out like
fantastic.
almost like jazzy.
Yeah, and that's another thing death does that a lot of death metal bands don't. They actually incorporate jazz influence in their music.
Yeah. I can totally hear that. A condemning fear strikes down, thinks that cannot understand, an excuse to cover up. Damn. I can say definitely lyrically, this is a really good album. I don't know. I almost feel like I shouldn't even rate it based off of my own opinion because, like, I'm so ignorant to this genre as a whole, and I don't even really know what to expect. But I guess to some degree that kind of makes it more interesting. I would say, like, a 7.5 based off of the metric that we came up with on the other stream, which was basically that it's like something I might listen to again, and it's objectively really good, and I like it. Objectively, I would give this a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is one of those albums that's just a straight 10 out of 10 for me, objectively and personally.
Yeah.
I love this album. I was introduced to it through the top 100 metal albums list.
Yeah, I'm starting to. I did the Avenged Sevenfold album, which was number 100, and I'm just procrastinating it now because I really don't want to listen to Evanescence.
It's not as bad as you remember, I promise.
Okay, so what? It's tolerable?
I think, like, I don't know if I've ever told you guys about this, but eventually I'm going to be releasing a video series on this channel where I go through the top 100 metal albums in tens, just like I'm doing with the albums I love. And basically what my goal is to listen to these albums and see if I can make an argument as to why they belong on this list or why they don't. So that's what I do. I go through and like, oh, this album belongs for these reasons, or no, it doesn't for these reasons. And then I'll also list the essential tracks of the album.
Yeah, so we are on See Through Dreams now.
See Through Dreams, yeah. As for what I said about Evanescence, I basically said that it's an album that deserves praise, but it doesn't belong on this list. It's good, but not 8 out of 10 good. Not 9 out of 10 good. Barely even 7.5 good. Say maybe 6.57 is what I would give that album. I think, like, my biggest problem with it was that the instrumentals on that album were really just serviceable. They weren't anything great. They weren't... All they did is just... Like, it's the bare minimum. You know, like, if you're in a restaurant, your waitress brings you your drinks once and then never comes back for a refill. That's what the album's instrumentals are like. They do the bare fucking minimum and nothing more. Vocally, though, that album is absolutely phenomenal. Amy Lee is an incredible singer, and I think that album truly showcases how talented she really is and what her gigantic range is.
Yeah. I know, what was it, My Immortal, she absolutely, like, the one lady absolutely hated because they basically used, like, a GIMP's demo of it.
Yeah, basically, that's what it was on the album. Like, it was just Like, it wasn't the version she wanted. She did later release the version she wanted. I
Yeah,
think it's
I haven't
actually
actually heard
worse.
that version, but
I think the version on the album is better because it's not as like produced, and it's more of a stripped
could also
down.
just be like what we all grew up with.
Yeah, that's true. I will
Anyway,
say though, Bring Me to Life is not any better on the album than it is outside of it. I don't love that song, and I never have. I especially don't like it in the concept of the album, though, or in the context of the album. So, as for this song on the album, Death, let's talk about that album for a minute.
yeah,
See Through Dreams.
yeah, was a
This song is about living with blindness.
oh, that's not relevant at all. The next song is going to be an instrumental, Cosmic
Yes,
Sea,
it is.
which
How'd you know
honestly,
that?
I mean, because it says it has no lyrics.
Oh, okay. You pulled it up already.
Yeah, I've been reading the lyrics like most of the show.
So this is another one of my favorite songs on the album, not just because Logan here, who I've known for quite a few years, is blind,
Yeah.
but because I think the lyrics perfectly capture what it's like to live with blindness in
I'll
the
have to
way that
read it.
they
I'll have
read.
to read it, but yeah, I definitely. I mean, look, I think what I like about this album, there are a lot of political albums. There are a lot of protest albums. I would actually say my favorite protest album that I can think of off the top of my head is Wake Up by John Legend and Roots. And you'll hear all about that on my top 50 albums of all time. But, you know, who would have thought to write a song about the struggles of Siamese twins? This is like more woke than the SJW crowd. Like,
Since the
they
next
are,
one's an instrumental,
nobody's
like,
talking
read
about
the
the hardships and struggles of Siamese twins.
yeah, and read the lyrics of this one, See Through Dreams. Like, feel the dark and the cold, feel the warmth of the light, which has been denied. Hands change into my eyes, body senses intensified, sight so close yet so far away. Like, that's really good lyricism. Come on.
Yeah.
So, instrumental. The best part of this album is the instrumentals.
This song is Cosmic Sea. I think there's only one instrumental that I can see.
Yep, this is the only one. And then the next song is the last one.
Vacant Planets.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm not entirely sure what is about, but yeah.
Yeah. And I'll get more into Wake Up when I get into it, but here's the thing about protest records. My problem with a lot of protest records and political records as a whole is they address a problem, but don't necessarily address solutions. Like, nothing really comes to a conclusion. And to be fair, like, that's because in a lot of socio-political issues, there is no definitive solution.
And also, it's just not their job as musicians to do that. That's the politician's job.
But, yeah, but, like, it is their job if you're protesting something. You can bitch about problems all day. It's not going to matter if you don't have answers to those problems. And if you don't have answers to those problems, I mean, like, that's understandable, but sometimes you can, like, even if it's not an answer you necessarily agree with, like, I think, like, I would necessarily agree with, like, you can acknowledge something is a problem all day. It's not going to get solved unless you suggest a solution. Politicians, yeah, they can suggest solutions, but I think the point of protesting should be to sway public opinion to one way. Like, for example, you know, there's all this talk about defunding the police and, you know, things like that. Whether you agree with it or not, it's a solution, is my point.
It's not a good solution.
Yeah, whether you agree with it or not, it's still a solution, which is more than some protesters.
Okay, so is nuking the entire planet.
I'm saying they're doing something that other people aren't. and also defunding and also like I could get into like how defunding the police is kind of like I think it's I fundamentally agree with the concept, but I think it's very taken out of context, and it allows itself to be taken out of context because of how they phrase the overall proposal. You have to play politics. You have to know how to spin something. Thing I mention all the time is pro-life and pro-choice. At its front, at its face, you're not going to object to those proposals. Are you? So what? You're pro-choice. That means you're anti-life, right? You're pro-life. That means you're anti-choice. You're anti-freedom. That's a genius way of framing those arguments. Is you can boil them down to two things, two sides of a coin that you can't reasonably object to at its core. If you get into the specifics, yeah, you can object to one, but at its core, that's kind of like. But I digress. My point is, whether you agree with it or not, they're offering solutions. People are talking about reparations. I didn't necessarily agree with that, but now I don't agree with reparations specifically for Black people, but I think like maybe people who are like people who are involved in slave labor in the prison system, I think that they should get compensation when they get out of prison. They should be given
but like
$2,000-$3,000, and it has nothing to do with race or anything like that.
we're now on Vacant Planets. I guess you have a point, but you have to understand that's not musical. It's not practical to sit there and preach about what you think should be done. It's more practical to sit there and bitch about things, musically speaking. I mean, what do you want out of punk albums? Do you want them to make a song complaining about issues and have the very next song just be an informational piece about what to do with it?
I think you can. I think that it can work. Like, like you can frame it in sort of like a dystopian way, but I think if it's an ongoing issue, you should like at least imply like, it could be simple as like, okay, the ice caps are melting, global warming is bad. Like that is something you can say. Like, don't get it to the point where we flood the entire world. Like, just something simple like that. It doesn't need to be like a complex solution. It just needs to be like, it's like you telling a story. You tell the beginning, you have the rising action, and then you just end. Is what I'm saying. I think that's actually bad songwriting and bad storytelling. I don't like.
I mean,
there's
it's
a
bad
lot of
storytelling, but you're using a false equivocation. Making a song is not the same as writing a story. It is if the song is a story, but if the song isn't a story, then you can't judge it by the metrics of story writing.
Music in it of itself is pretty much poetry. Rap at its bare bones is poetry. Music at its bare bones is poetry.
No.
So
music exists outside of lyrics too.
Well, lyrical,
so at its bare bones, it's rhythm and melody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I mean by though is like, I like lyrical. I mean, is poetry. Lyrics, I mean, is poetry.
Well, yes, but it's applied to a medium that is not poetry. So you can't like judge it based on those merits. That's what I'm saying. Like, practically speaking, when you make music, it makes more sense to make angry protest music just bitching about problems than solution music. Like, that's just not practical, I don't think. That's why it's never been done.
Well, then you're kind of just no better than someone ranting on Twitter.
Except you're making music about it. You're making art.
I mean, we can agree. I guess we'll just kind of have to agree to disagree on that. But I think that I think it's just generally like, if you're going to complain about problems and you don't have a solution, then clearly you aren't well versed enough in the problem to be bitching about it in the first place.
I mean, some people just aren't good at coming up with solutions. I'm a perfect example of that. I am absolutely fantastic at just poking holes in people's arguments. There are scientists that make a living just out of recreating people's experiments and proving them false or whatever else.
Yeah.
There's certainly a place
By
for
the way,
people like us in discourse.
Yeah, we are on vacant planets, if I didn't say that already.
I already said that, yeah.
Oh, actually, my album just ended.
Yeah, mine too. That was the end of it. So,
anyway, so
before we end the podcast, I want to finish what I was saying. So, just because I can't come up with an idea on my own doesn't make my place in the conversation useless.
I think it kind of does.
No, it doesn't, because you have to have somebody to be able to point out the flaws in your plan. You need that person. It's a necessary part of debating.
Yeah.
And then you leave the people who actually specialize in creating new ideas. You leave that to those people, the politicians.
Yeah, but I guess death is better because they're coming up with issues that nobody would have thought to come up with. Like, nobody cares. How do I put this in the best way possible? It's okay. It's not that nobody cares about Siamese twins. It's like nobody would have thought to care about that. It's not something
nobody would have talked about it. Yeah,
it's nobody would have talked about. You know what I mean? Like it's obviously a serious issue. I mean, they go through a lot of hardship. I'm not taking anything away from that. It's just it's such a unique issue that nobody would have thought to care about it.
Yeah.
Not saying that you shouldn't care about it, but I would say a lot of these protest albums are like racism is bad, sexism is bad, the environment and global warming and climate change is bad. Like, okay, yeah, what do you want, a cookie? Like, you're just saying obvious shit. Come up with a solution. How do we end global warming? How do we end racism? How do we end sexism?
It's something people need to hear. I mean, take Toxic Garbage Island by Gojira.
Yeah.
That song is about the eponymous toxic garbage island that floats through the ocean. I can't tell you how many people have been educated about that thing's existence through that song.
Well, yeah, fair enough. But it also comes up with a solution, and it's plain and simple. Don't do that. Don't make Toxic Garbage Island expand.
Don't make another Toxic Garbage Peninsula.
Don't do that, or don't add, or stop adding to the one we already have. Like obviously, yeah. Is it an eloquent solution? No, but it's a solution. Is my point. And it's simple. Don't do this. Anyway, so let's move on to the album. I'm going to stick with what I said. Objectively, 10 out of 10. I mean, the instrumentation is amazing, obviously. The mix is fantastic, very heavy, very eerie and doomy. The guitar tone is fantastic. The vocals, I would say, as somebody who's not very well versed in death metal, I would say they are a cut above what I have heard. And it's definitely not quite to the conclusion of what death metal would become. But that kind of makes it its own unique thing. So it's sort of, it as a result of it being older, it's a little bit more unique, I think, than some death metal bands I've heard. But yeah, objectively, I would give it a 7.5, which is basically the highest I possibly could give something like this. It's basically saying it's totally possible I might come back to this, maybe not. But objectively, it is very good. And even personally, I really enjoyed what I heard, and I don't regret it. I don't regret listening to it.
So I'm going to wank off this album a bit. I think that this album is absolutely fantastic. You have the amazing drumming, which backs up the fantastic bass playing, which also backs up the legendary, influential guitar playing of Chuck Schuldiner, who has influenced thousands of players since he died in 1999. There have been so many bands that are basically only influenced by Death. I mean, practically Death created an entire fucking genre, not
Yeah.
with this album in particular, but just the band in general.
Yeah.
This album, I think, is their peak. Its technical prowess is awe-inspiring. The pure
Yeah.
musicality of it, the lyricism,
Agreed.
the simple flow and cohesion of the album. It never drags. It never feels like it's going too fast. It's only 30 minutes long.
Yeah,
And
it's
like for once, I can't even criticize it by saying it feels too short. It just feels right.
yeah.
It just feels right. And that's why I give this album a 10 out of 10. It is one of the best metal albums of all time.
Yeah, I can definitely. I mean, I have no objections to what you're saying. Just everything that you said is totally on point. I mean, I guess you don't need to tell. I guess you don't need me to tell you that this is a masterpiece album because anybody who's interested in this type of music has already listened to it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless you have anything more to say about it, I think we can wrap this up.
I think that we can. But let's just wait 10 more seconds.
Why?
All right, goodbye.